Αγνή παρθένε δέσποινα, αχράντε Θεοτόκε.
Hello and welcome to the Orthodox Logos. My name is Ian Silver and I'm joined by my co-host Nathaniel Harmon.
Greetings. I'm glad to not be joined with you.
We are no longer together.
I have nothing to add to this.
I do, but
I'm sure you do.
Anyway, today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. We're going to be talking about fake human sacrifices, which were filmed at Cern. If you guys haven't seen what Cern is, you can Google it. We'll go over a little bit of it, but they have done some crazy rituals, and I think for their grand opening, they did some really weird stuff. Maybe we can find a little video of that.
Yeah, if you can find that. I never bought all the hype surrounding Cern when it opened.
We'll probably play that. So we'll be talking about what they consider the God particle. I think that's what they call it, right?
Blasphemers, yes.
Yeah. The God particle, Shiva. We'll dive into a little bit of the history of Shiva and who Shiva is, and why did they do this mock human sacrifice, and what does it mean? And yeah, anything else, Nate?
No, I will say that this isn't exactly the bleeding edge of news. This happened in 2016, so 6-ish years ago. So it's not like it happened yesterday, but I first heard about this from, I believe Michael Knowles made a reference to it, and I was like, wait, what? So I went and looked it up, and of course it actually happened, and what he stated was far less crazy than what actually happened.
Also, not in frame is our friend Garrett, or John, so if you hear anybody in the
crunching on a bag of Doritos.
Yeah. It's him.
Sweet. So
hi, buddy. Hi. There we go. So yeah, I guess
we should start out with Shiva, because
well, I think what we should start with is a prayer.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah. Shall we?
Yes.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen.
Amen. So we should talk about Shiva first, because it's rather interesting. I won't claim to be any kind of expert on Hindu religiosity, but Shiva, if my memory is correct, is one of the 3 chief gods of the Hindu pantheon, correct?
Yeah.
Shiva, otherwise known as the destroyer, but he is also the patron god of poison and fertility, which is weird and somewhat, shall we say, at odds.
Yeah.
So it's rather interesting, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, obviously, but it's interesting that the Indian government sent a statue or an idol of Shiva to the Large Hadron Collider in Cern, especially given all of the rumors that were floating around about how Cern was going to be the site of the destruction of the world. And that's been a rumor that's been floating around since Cern was started to be built in the 90s. I think it was like 98 or 99 that they started building Cern. But especially in the early 2000s, everyone was like, oh my gosh, when they fire this thing up, it's going to create a black hole that's going to destroy the world. You know, that was a huge thing 12 or so odd years ago.
Yeah, I followed a lot of the CERN stuff for a while, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go ahead and dive into this. I guess some housekeeping. Same thing we said in the last video. Prayer book's almost done. We have some announcements. I think we made them in the last one. We're going to be joined by Jonathan Pajot in August. So if you guys have any ideas, not that we can guarantee we'll use them, but we're open to some ideas and topics that we should speak with him about. So that's really about it. Make sure to like, subscribe, become a Patreon member if you can. patreon.com/theorthodoxlogos. We truly appreciate the support. It means a lot to us. Gives us the opportunity to continue doing this, even when I don't want to. So, here we are. All right, so Shiva, as Nathan was saying, is one of the most important gods, lowercase g, in the Hindu pantheon, and is considered a member of the Holy Trinity of Hinduism, with Brahma and Vishnu. A complex character, he may represent goodness, benevolence, and serve as the protector. He is also associated with time, and particularly as the destroyer and creator of all things.
So I have to pause you there for a minute and say it's rather curious that they say he's benevolent when one of the things that he is consistently represented with is a necklace of skulls. Kind of hard to get benevolence out of that, I think.
Yeah, and serpents.
Yeah, and snakes, and also
There's different images.
usually from what I've read and what I've heard, his idols are typically smeared with the ashes of cremated corpses. So, like I said, benevolence out of this is it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But do continue.
So in Hinduism, the universe is thought to regenerate in cycles, and they have a number every, 2 billion? Yeah,
Yes,
2,160,000,000 years. Shiva destroys the universe at the end of each cycle, which then allows for a new creation. Shiva is also the great ascetic, abstaining from all forms of indulgence and pleasure, concentrating rather on meditation as a means to find perfect happiness. He also has a darker side as the leader of evil spirits, ghosts, and as the master of thieves, villains, and beggars. Shiva is the most important Hindu god for the Shaivism sect, the patron of yogis, Brahmins, and also the protector of the Vedas, the sacred text. Do you like how I can pronounce those things better than I can pronounce the other
Welsh
stuff?
in Latin?
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It's kind of odd that they use the word. I mean, I guess the word Trinity doesn't necessarily have to be a biblical meaning, but they have their own Trinity.
Well, but it's obviously not in the Christian sense, because
Yeah.
the Holy Trinity in the Christian sense is not three distinct...
Talk a little closer.
Is not
There we go.
three distinct, separate beings in the sense that this is discussing.
Yeah. It has a Trinity, and they're all different.
Yeah, well, it has three chief deities, not three in one.
Yeah, not 3 in 1. So Shiva, Parvati, and Ganesha. So Shiva's wife was Parvati, often incarnated as Kali and Durga.
Oh, okay, so Kali is into this. Okay, interesting.
She was in fact the reincarnation of Sati or Dakshanani, the daughter of the god Daksha. Daksha did not approve of Sati's marriage to Shiva and even went further and held a special sacrificial ceremony to all the gods except Shiva. Outraged at this slight, Sati threw herself on the sacrificial fire. Shiva reacted to this tragedy by creating 2 demons, Virabhadra and Rudrakali, from his hair, who wreaked havoc on the ceremony and beheaded Daksha. The other gods appealed to Shiva to end the violence, and complying, he brought Dakshka back to life, but with the head of a ram or a goat. Sati was eventually reincarnated as Parvati in her next life, and she remarried Shiva. So a lot of weird stuff going on there.
Well, no, that checks out. That's actually very similar to, it sounds an awful lot like the bits of the Baal cycle that I've read, to a degree, and also very similar to the Egyptian, some Egyptian mythology with the whole idea of, let me think. It's, who's the father? No, it's Osiris. Okay, so Osiris is killed, and Osiris's wife then, or is killed by Seth or Set, and that leads to all kinds of fun. We'll talk about that another time.
So, kind of to wrap up who Shiva is, in mythology, as with any major god, lowercase g, Shiva was involved in many adventurous episodes which illustrate his virtuous character and offer instruction on how to live correctly. For example, self-sacrifice is emphasized when Vasuki, the king of serpents, threatened to vomit snake venom across the seas. That's a good name right there.
Oh dear.
Shiva,
Don't name your snakes after demons.
Shiva, assuming the form of a giant tortoise or turtle, collected the venom in his palm and drank it. The poison burned his throat and left a permanent blue scar. Hence, one of his many titles became Nilakanta, or Blue Throat.
Okay, so that's why he's called the god of poison then.
Yeah. Another celebrated episode describes how Shiva became associated with the bull Nandi. One day, Surabhi, who was the original mother of all the world's cows, began to give birth to an untold number of perfectly white cows. The milk from all these cows flooded the home of Shiva, somewhere in the Himalaya. Angry at this disturbance to his meditation, the god struck the cows with fire from his third eye. In consequence, patches of the cows' hides were turned brown. Still angry, the other gods sought to calm Shiva down by offering him a magnificent bull, Nandi, the son of Surabhi and Kasyapa, which Shiva accepted and rode. Nandi also became the protector of all animals. Let's see if there's anything else. So Shiva is closely associated with Linga or Lingam, a phallus or symbol of fertility or divine energy found in temples to the god. So phallus would,
Well, everyone knows
should
what
know
that
what that
means.
is. Yeah. Following the death of Sarti and before her reincarnation, Shiva was in mourning and went to the Daru forest to live with rishis or sages. However, the wives of the rishis soon began to take an interest in Shiva. In jealousy, the rishis first sent a large antelope and then a gigantic tiger against the god, but Shiva swiftly dealt with them and wore the tiger skin thereafter. The sages then cursed Shiva's manhood, which in consequence fell off. When the phallus struck the ground, earthquakes began, and the rishis became afraid and asked for forgiveness. This was given, but Shiva told them to forever offer worship, the phallic symbol.
Well, this actually, again, ties very closely into the whole cult of Osiris and what supposedly happened to him. So when Seth kills him, he cuts him into 13 pieces. And when his wife, and I cannot for the life of me remember what Osiris's wife's name is, when she goes and finds all of the pieces and puts them back together, but the one piece she can't find is his phallus, so she makes a clay phallus for him.
Great.
Which is very similar to this myth, obviously.
Yeah, and there's some articles I can put in the description, just like why, as Orthodox Christians, yoga is not something we practice, because if you don't understand, yoga comes from the word yoke, and there's a lot of things that can relate to. But basically, when you're doing certain yoga poses or certain types of yoga, you're actually worshiping these deities and these demons. When you do like sun salutations, you are worshiping the sun.
Right.
You wake up and you worship the sun. And as Orthodox Christians, what we do when we wake up, hopefully, and what we lack doing a lot of the times, is wake up and we thank God for another day and ask for mercy upon us. So it's a complete inversion as well. So yeah, so there's an article here. I'm not going to go through it, but basically why yoga is not accepted within Orthodoxy, and Kundalini energy, and Kundalini means serpent, so they believe that you're channeling some sort of serpent through the base of your spine, and yeah, there's a lot of things.
Also refers to what Shiva wears
Here,
on the back of his neck.
Here, let's do this. Let's just read a little bit of this. So, how is yoga connected with Hinduism? To be clear, Hinduism does not refer to a specific religion. It is a term that British gave to the various cults, philosophies, and shamanistic religions of India. If you ask one Hindu if he believes in God, he may tell you that you are God. But ask another, and he will point to a rock or statue or a flame of fire. This is Hindu polarity. Either you are God or everything else is a god. So yoga is beneath the umbrella of Hinduism, and in many ways is the pole of the umbrella. It acts as a missionary arm for Hinduism and the New Age outside of India. Hinduism is like an extraordinary Russian nesting doll. You open one philosophy, and within it are 10,000 more. And the unopened ones are risks. You may swim easily and carelessly in waters you do not know, but unaware of the tides and nuances of the area, you may be in danger. You may be swept away by the undertow. You may cut yourself against unseen rocks and contract imperceptible infection and poison. This happens in the spiritual life. So yeah, it's not something to mess around with, and it kind of goes into different offerings and temples dedicated to Kali, the goddess of death.
Well, we can read that if you'd like.
Sure. The first time I visited India, I took off my shoes and socks and walked through the water, coconuts, discarded candy, and shimmering fire of Kalkaji Temple. It is one of the most famous temples dedicated to Kali, the goddess of death. I didn't know it, but I was right in the middle of her most important festival of the year. The temple was chaos and the energy very heightened and dark. Thousands of men, women, and children gathered at this Rishikesh temple to worship the demon. I like how he's goes straight to worship the demon.
I mean, that's exactly what's happening, though.
Next to me, a woman's eyes rolled back in her head, arms waving back and forth, tongue wagging pink from her mouth, legs lifting and falling like a puppet on strings. This was clearly demonic possession. Once I venerated the Sitka Mother of God icon and experienced incredible warmth, tears of humility, love, mental clarity, and peace. It was like walking in front of a window full of warm, fragrant sunshine. At Kalkaji Temple, I experienced quite the opposite. Kali is often depicted as a frightful, many-armed goddess with purple skin raising a severed human head, a bloody tongue hanging from her mouth. She wears a necklace of human heads and a belt of arms. So I can kind of skip that, but sun salutation was never a hatha yoga tradition, says Subhas Ramprasad Tiwari, professor of yoga philosophy and meditation at Hindu University of America in Orlando, Florida. It is a whole series of ritual appreciations to the sun, being thankful for the source of energy. So again, people worshiping the creation rather than the creator. To think of yoga as a mere physical movement is tantamount to saying that baptism is just an underwater exercise, writes Swami Param of the Classical Yoga Hindu Academy and Dharma Yoga Ashram in Manahawkin, New Jersey. It is the goddess Kali who attempts to unite practitioners through Shakti with Shiva by means of yoga. At her temple just outside New Delhi, I saw the hideous self-manifested idol, a rock with strange beady eyes, beaked and covered in yellowy slime and curdled food. In Hinduism, idols are woken up. They are dressed, they are fed, they are sung to, and they are put to sleep. I've been part of hundreds of these ceremonies, and that's something they talk about.
It's very pagan. That is a legit thing that every pagan culture in history has practiced.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot in Lord of the Spirits. Like, you can make a god.
It's not that you can make a god. You can create a housing for a deity.
Yeah, you dress it, you feed it, you sing to it, and it manifests itself.
If you want to have an interesting scriptural read on this, in the real canon of sacred scripture, unlike what a lot of Protestants and some Roman Catholics use, there's a text called I believe it's called the Epistle of Jeremiah. And it's super short. You can read it in like 15 minutes. And it's Jeremiah talking about how idols are merely homes for demons and they can't actually do anything. And it's pretty interesting because it really ties into this.
So, and obviously there's like a traditional greeting in Sanskrit, namaste, and it's basically I honor the light or the divine within you, and that is an affirmation of pantheism and denial of true God revealed in the Bible. The sun salutations, or Surya Namkasara, originated with the worship of the Hindu solar deity Surya. In church hagiography and iconography, we venerate saints, real people who live righteously before God and participated and continue to participate in his light and love, asking for their intercessions. Idols, on the other hand, writes Father Michael Pomazansky, are the images of false gods, and the worship of them was a worship of demons, or else of imaginary beings that have no existence. And thus, in essence, it is a worship of the lifeless objects themselves. And yeah, so basically, be careful of that stuff. Let's see, there's a prayer. And yet when it came time for me to receive this cursed energy through Shaktipat, an unbelievable fear washed over me like cold, electrified water. So I raised my shield and sword. I started saying the Jesus prayer, glory to God. This awful presence was deflected by the name of Jesus. We must remember, as St. Paul writes, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. With that prayer as my shield and sword, I swam a stroke back towards Christ. I took a step out of the far country. I took a step into my Father's house.
So, that is a fantastic article. Pardon me. That is a fantastic article, and it gives a little bit of context as to why it's really, really bad that there is an idol of Shiva in the middle of Cern, right? This alleged center of scientific endeavor and inquiry, right? This is the god that they allow to be present there, right? I'm more than willing to bet there are no Christian chapels, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, or otherwise. I would be more than willing to bet that there are none of them in Cern, none of them in the laboratory at least.
So you haven't seen this, Nate?
I have no idea what this is.
So this is the I'll put it on full screen. This was like the opening ceremony for Gotthard Base Tunnel, and it's I'm not gonna watch the whole thing because I'll probably get demonetized or something might happen. So we'll just watch a little bit of it. Fit to screen. There we go. I might not even play the music. Let's see.
Okay, that's weird. What the heck?
It gets way worse.
Okay, so this is effectively an orgiastic kind of thing. What?
Yeah.
Okay, this is obviously very Northern European pagan. It's supposed to be like some sort of...
I'm going to skip forward just a little bit. So they continue doing this. Here we go. This was some of the weird stuff. So it's
like the stuff we've seen thus far is not insane already. Okay, well, the 3 being there is obviously important. The 3 fates in Greek, or the 3 Norns in Norse mythology.
But yeah, you kind of get it. Let's see how it wraps. So yeah, that was the opening ceremony. You've never seen that?
I had never seen that, no.
Pretty.
Well, that makes sense as to why they'd call the Higgs boson particle the God particle, because there's a lot of demonic hubris going on there.
Pretty wicked stuff, man.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, little opening as to what they're into there. Few fake human sacrifice filmed at Cern. Also, let's see if this works.
Might want to mute this just because there's supposed to be a lot of profanity that happens
in it.
Yes.
Okay. But let's see. Excuse me while I finish it or get this going. So there we go. Let's see if you can even see what's going on here. I'll mute it. I don't know if you can really see anything. But there's the statue of Shiva. It's the same one that I shared here earlier. Let me see if I can pull it back up, just so people can get an idea of what they're using. So this was, I guess, donated to them?
Yeah, by the religiously unaffiliated government of India.
Yeah. So yeah, Nate, if you want to go ahead and read this, I don't know where you want to start.
Okay, so the headline here on The Guardian is Fake Human Sacrifice Filmed at CERN with Pranking Scientists Suspected. Yeah, let's see. And the article says, the European Organization for Nuclear Research at CERN has launched an investigation into a video filmed at night on its Geneva campus depicting a mock ritual human sacrifice. The video, which circulated online, shows several individuals in black cloaks gathering in the main square at Europe's top physics lab, in what appears to be a reenactment of an occult ceremony. The video includes the staged stabbing of a woman. It is filmed from the perspective of a secret viewer watching from a window above who, as the ceremony reaches its climax, lets out a string of expletives and flees with the camera still running. The ceremony appears to have been staged in front of a statue of the Hindu deity Shiva that is on permanent display at the complex home of the Large Hadron Collider. These scenes were filmed on our premises, but without official permission or knowledge, a CERN spokeswoman told Agence France Presse in an email.
Yeah, sure, considering the video we just watched.
CERN does not condone this type of spoof, which can give rise to misunderstandings about the scientific nature of our work. The investigation underway was an internal matter, she said. The video has raised questions about security on CERN's campus. Asked to detail the security procedures surrounding access to the campus, the Cern spokeswoman said, Cern IDs are checked systematically at each entry to the Cern site, whether it is night or day. She further indicated that those responsible for the prank had access badges. Cern welcomes every year hundreds of thousands or thousands of scientific users from all over the world, and sometimes some of them let their humor go too far. This is what happened on this occasion, the email said. The spokeswoman was not available to comment on the possible identity of those responsible. Geneva police told the AFP that they had been in contact with Cern about the video, but they were not involved in an official investigation. Cern hosts machinery carrying out some of the world's most elaborate particle research, including the enormously powerful proton smasher trying to find previously undiscovered particles. So, I'm going to call BS on their commentary saying, this is a spoof that gives, how shall I say?
A bad interpretation.
Like, that video, the bits of the opening ceremonies video indicates to me that they, whether or not they know it, the people who run CERN anyway, whether or not they know it, that they are playing way outside their sphere of knowledge when it comes to quote unquote science. Because the stuff that they're showing there, the things that they're referencing, again, whether they know it or not, are not normal things. That is not how a society under the influence of Christianity acts. Those are demonic things they're doing. I mean, that was effectively from the bits that I saw anyway, what that looked like was some sort of orgiastic ritual,
like
or
a fertility ritual.
Worshipping some sort of pagan deities. I'm not precisely sure who they were after, but anyone who watched that would have noticed a lot of goats present, which to the modern Christian mind calls to mind images of the imagery of Satan,
Baphomet,
or the demonic. If you're more familiar with Northern European mythology, the goats tend to be heavily related to the chariot of Thor, but also based on what we just read about Shiva. Shiva's father-in-law has the head of a goat because Shiva got bent out of shape and cut his head off, and then brought him back to life with the head of a goat. So the references there, like I said, whether or not they're intentional, are not without meaning. And that's rather horrifying. And interestingly, I came across a couple of articles. I wasn't able to verify the veracity of these comments, but apparently, allegedly at least, the guy who filmed the video died. The video of the mock human sacrifice died.
Yeah, that seems to be the case in situations like this.
Yeah. So,
or maybe that was the actual sacrifice.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to comment on that. I'll do some more looking into it because I just came across those articles like 10 minutes before we went live. So I can't discuss that with any degree of confidence, but it's worth recognizing that the modern obsession with science has opened the door to the demonic in a way that we never would have considered feasible, say, 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ian and I have said this before, but if you go through the book of Enoch, and even if you go through the Old Testament, right, if you read about Tubal-Cain and Jubal and these various descendants of Cain, right, everything that, like all of the technology they acquire, metallurgy, animal husbandry, music, the building of cities, right, all this comes from demons.
Technology.
Right? Yeah, and like there's a story I'm very fond of referencing in the book of Enoch, where Enoch is shown a number of demons, and I believe it's Uriel is the archangel who's with him. It's either Uriel or Raphael, I don't remember. Says, hey, so this is the demon that taught people how to make weapons. This is the demon who taught people how to use seductive magic. And he goes through this list of all these various demons and what it is that they taught mankind. And then he gets to one and says, oh yeah, that demon over there is the one who taught mankind how to read and write, and we haven't seen the evil that that's going to bring into the world. So, and then they move on, of course, because you can't just explain something like that, which is unfortunate, because I would love to know what the author of Enoch thought of writing in a little bit more explicit terms.
Yeah, Pajot's talked about those type of advances, like, not using our memory anymore and writing things down
Mm-hmm.
and relying on technology. And I mean, even like the Tower of Babel.
Right. Well, there's one of the things that I'm really fond of pointing out to people when it comes to technology and just the way that
We've said it before, it's not inherently evil. Or, I mean, I guess it depends on how you use it.
When we possess it, it generally goes in a
or
bad
when
direction.
it possesses us.
Right. So when it comes to scientific inquiry, one of the things that I'm very fond of pointing out is that epidemiology makes no sense. Right. So that's something I like to study because it's cool. It's one of the only things in biology that I actually care about. But STDs, so sexually transmitted diseases, make no sense. Right. We like to speak of evolution as having some sort of teleology, which from a materialistic standpoint makes no sense because a utterly natural process can't have knowledge of the future because the future doesn't exist. And also, to a degree, the past doesn't exist. It's only a number of presents that exist, right? So STDs don't make sense because why is it that if the evolutionary imperative is to engage in a particular activity in order to spread one's genetic material, why is it that leads to the creation of pathologies that are extremely dangerous and almost always fatal, especially without modern medicine? Right? Like, if I'm a philanderer, it makes no sense that me engaging in that activity with 25 different people. It makes no sense that on woman number 24, something like syphilis just randomly comes into existence. Right? Because each person has their own microbiome, right? And for women, the way that microbiome functions in their reproductive organs is a little bit different than the way it does for a man. But it's it's a thing, right? So the idea that
what is a woman?
So the idea that microbiomes being cross-pollinated, for lack of a better term, leads to a devastating neurological disease like syphilis doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't follow. But all that to say, that to me is a very clear indication that the that the difficulties we encounter in the natural world are the result of some sort of metaphysical curse or divine curse, which we in the Christian tradition would call the fall, right? If you want to go full Lord of Spirits, which fall, we're not going to go there because I'm not a biblical scholar, so I'm not going to comment on that. But the idea that the world is cursed because of us, that is what leads to pathologies, right? That's also what I think technology also helps lead to that, right? Like, it's interesting to me that when condoms were invented, people were like, isn't this great? Now we can philander and there will be no consequences. Well, as it turns out, condoms, which are a scientific invention, are pretty flawed and don't actually work that well. They're reasonably effective, but they are unequivocally not fail-proof. And I mean, even if the barrier material is not breached, they still aren't 100% effective, right? And the same with birth control. Like, what people tend to not recognize about hormonal birth control is what it does is it tricks your body into thinking that it is already ovulating. It tricks a woman's body into thinking she's already ovulating. And that's so you have women who are on hormonal birth control for 10 years. Their body thinks they're having a period for 10 bloody years.
Yeah.
That's not good. There's no way that can go well. Right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with technology. We've talked about the first experiment with nuclear fissible material happened under a stadium or under bleachers in a tennis court, I think, with Fermi and all these other guys in freaking Chicago. It's like, that's not responsible. That's terrible. That's a stupid idea. And the first nuclear weapon that was dropped in Hiroshima was dropped literally on top of a Roman Catholic church, because it was the tallest building on the Tokyo skyline. So the first victim of a nuclear attack, in the most precise sense of the term, was the cross that sits on top of a Roman Catholic cathedral in Hiroshima. Symbolism happens, and it's never good, it seems.
Yeah.
All technology does is cause us problems, which leads us, I think, and this is what Ian's clicking about is leading to, I think, is this very hubristic comment on the Higgs boson particle, which is now called the God particle. Not that we would be surprised to find such hubris in a lab where they're blatantly worshiping demons.
Yeah, so this is probably where we'll kind of wrap it up, and if anybody has any questions or comments, make sure to send us a message or an email, and if you have any ideas on some of the stuff they're doing here, we'd like to hear about it. So what is the God particle? The God particle is the particle which gives mass to the matter. It is scientifically named the Higgs boson, and until now, it was just a theory, but God particle exists. In 2016, the world's largest atom smasher, Large Hadron Collider, started to operate, and it is possible to be the first time travel machine. Actually, the first machine which can send the matter back in time. Tom Weiler and Choi Min Ho, scientists at Vanderbilt University, agree with this theory. The Large Collider is buried underground near Geneva, and scientists want to use it to send matter into the past, the type of matter named Higgs singlet. So basically opening a portal to some other something. You know what they're opening portals to. You could tell.
Well, I mean, they did that before they smashed any atoms.
Yeah. After 40 years of research for the God particle, also known as Higgs boson, finally the work of Peter Higgs reached a conclusion. This particle really exists. How do we explain this theory in simple words? Some particles give matter different properties. One of those properties, and maybe the most important, is the mass. The Higgs boson is, as we said before, the particle which gives mass to the matter. The singlet is just a technical term used for a particle which doesn't interact with the matter in the way we knew until today. This name is given after the scientist Peter Higgs. Theories say that this particle was the fuse that started the Big Bang, so that the universe is an infinite number of bubbles, and if this God particle was to blow these bubbles, it is possible that there could be other universes formed from the explosion.
Okay,
I think we get closer and closer to the idea of multiple parallel universes. Don't you think?
No, I don't think. This is something Garrett or John and I were talking about before we started this live stream. The idea that you discover a particle that imparts mass, that leads to multiple universes, is absurd. It doesn't follow. Now, I will say this, I'm not a physicist, so if someone can explain to me, like I'm 3 bloody years old, because apparently that's what this comes down to, because I don't see how saying, yes, this gravity gives the penny mass, so it falls to Earth, right? Because the Earth also has mass, which attracts it. Therefore, there are multiple universes. I'm going to need to see the other steps. I've watched and read a lot of different material on this topic, and I have never understood how this conclusion is reached. And maybe that's because I'm dumber than a box of rocks when it comes to physics. That's entirely possible.
Or maybe that's because it's not.
Or maybe they're dumber than a box of rocks. I don't know. But it just doesn't follow. It's interesting that there's this particle that creates a field that somehow causes mass to be felt or causes mass to react. That's cool. Because interestingly, and this is one of the things I've not heard them talk about yet, the Higgs boson can't actually provide mass because the mass is still dependent on the particle. The particle has mass. The Higgs boson just makes it work. So,
yeah, it's interesting, but it's definitely not Christian.
Yeah, well, modern scientists are just in love with their own egos, and they're kind of pagan in a really creepy way, as we observed, and I really wish I could really wish I could unsee that, but
it was necessary for this topic, which
you enjoy showing me stuff like that, don't lie.
I do. I enjoy watching stuff like that for some weird reason. Brings me back to my roots. Makes me feel at home.
Shouldn't those roots have been pulled out and thrown in the fire?
They have been. But yeah. Anyway, all jokes aside, this was something that Nate brought to my attention the other day, but I've done, like I've said, I've seen a lot of stuff on Cern. I was kind of not into it in any good way, but I was definitely watching it for many years. I was like, this
Well, it's a cool thing. It's
Well,
interesting.
Even when I was pagan, I was like, this is not good. Like, you're not opening a good gateway to anything at all.
Yeah. I remember.
This is not science.
Well, no, it kind of is. I mean, science is in many ways kind of alchemical. It's alchemy after a fashion. But I remember in the early 2000s when the Higgs boson, or not when the Higgs boson, when the Hadron Collider was in the forefront of popular news. Because like, oh, what's going to happen when they turn it on? Is the world going to be destroyed? And my thought wasn't actually, oh yeah, the world's going to be destroyed. It was, whatever's going to happen, the reassurance that the scientific community is putting out is not particularly reassuring, because like, oh, we've done the math, it's not going to cause a black hole. And at this point, lest we forget, black holes were still very, very, very theoretical. We had not actually taken a picture of one. We hadn't actually seen one. So we didn't actually know if they were real at this point.
Yeah.
We were like, yeah, the math checks out. But as I'm very fond of saying, lest we forget, the geocentric view of the universe, the Ptolemaic astronomical models, check out mathematically too. So math is not exactly a good way to, when somebody says, oh, this checks out mathematically, I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, things that have been shown to be wrong check out mathematically, so I don't really care. You need to demonstrate to me that there's actually a good reason not to believe this. Because when they said, oh yeah, well, it'll create a small black hole and it'll just evaporate before it does anything if it creates a black hole. It's like, okay, well, you've never actually seen a black hole, so we don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah, we don't know what it's going to create.
And, even if it does create a small black hole, you have no reason to assume it's going to evaporate because we've never seen that happen. We don't know how that works. So it's a lot of scientific hubris, and it is very frightening. And I just remember thinking, man, whether or not this is safe or not, these people are too cocky to have trigger control on this.
And from my knowledge, it seems like things have been kind of quiet over there. So who knows what they're
doing now,
what they're up to. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't seen anything or heard anything in a while, so they're working on stuff for sure. They don't spend billions and billions of dollars to not be working on things.
Have you seen the U.S. federal government?
Well, yeah, I guess you're right. But yeah, I guess that kind of wraps it up for today, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was just like we said, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. Neither of us are physicists. I'm actually extremely.
Did you just assume my?
I know for a fact you're not a physicist.
Whatever. What are you, a biologist?
Actually, kind of.
Okay.
In a very half-cocked kind of way, but yeah, I'm actually fairly good at biology. I don't like that I'm good at biology, but I am good at it.
Well, what I'm good at is saying thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. Become a Patreon member, patreon.com/theorthodoxlogos. There's different tiers, book club, ASAP, this week, book club, for sure. So to all 19 of our Patreon members, we really appreciate you guys. It's a blessing to have your support. Yeah, that's about it. We got a few videos coming soon, things in the works, people that we'll be interviewing. We're going to have Father Jarmus on again soon.
Outstanding.
Father John Valadez, we're going to do another one. David Patrick Harry, we're working on that. Shout out to David Patrick Harry. We've been talking about doing something for a while. It is happening. So, yeah, God bless you guys, and we will see you soon. Nate?
Godspeed. Cheers.
Cheers.